Solo started in October last year. It started from a really toxic situation that I had gone through and still am going through. And I've been slightly more vulnerable to share more about that story on social media. Once we had officially launched the retail brand and we'd seen how many people had actually reached out to us. But it started as a golf glove and golf sock brand that moved very quickly into the corporate space, doing custom socks and custom golf gloves for the likes of, it could be a Mercedes-Benz, it could be a Microsoft, it could be an Amazon. There's a whole bunch of brands that are doing trade shows, conferences, corporate events, and they need giveaways. That was a very easy play for us, and we moved in that really quickly, really well, and that's doing exceptionally well globally, across Asia Pacific, UK, Europe, into the US and Canada as well now too. And then one of the co-founders, Ollie, he really wanted to break down this golf sock, and one of the things that he was looking to do is bring out the number one golf sock in the world. We're fortunate that I've got some experience in making socks for the last 10, 15 years, so bringing that to market was a pretty easy play for us. So we jumped on a plane, went overseas, and really started to look at the pain points of golfers. What do they need? One of the biggest things was blisters. That comes up a lot, so all right, let's increase the cushion heel on the sock by 20 mil. Now we are eliminating and minimising blisters within a foot when you're getting through that 18-hole period. So that was number one ticked off. Number two was we looked at the actual movement of the sock and how it runs, and we changed the weave. So we've come up with a new type of technology called New Wave, which we've trademarked, and that's allowed us to develop a really cool, innovative sock that would be a world first in terms of my experience in socks.
Very cool.
And so when we launched that 2-3 weeks ago, the actual retail brand, the mindset was, we're going to bring to market a brand that is innovative, that thinks differently, and comes to market with exceptionally good, highly technical retail branded products. What we found happen was that there was an immediate shift to our pillar, which was men's mental health, and so we came up with this idea of you're not alone, and that came from, to revert back to how this all started, my scenario and what I was going through last year, and I was playing golf a lot, solos. I'd send a photo, or my mates would send a photo of themselves at a pub having a beer, and they'd send me a message saying solos, just having a beer at the bar, at the pub. So that kind of started to rustle up there, and then Ollie, the co-founder as well, he had a really bad accident about 5 years ago, nearly died at Bondi Beach, and so mental health was definitely a big play for us all initially. Yep. And we launched an initial video, I think it was the end of last month, and it was all about mental health, and that, 7 people in Australia, 7 to 9 people across Australia and New Zealand each day commit suicide. That's specifically men. And it seems to have resonated with a lot of people, which then allowed me to share my exact story and what happened to me last year, where I came very close to not being here. And that was built up by the pressures of what was going on in the workplace and dealing with things that I could not control. It was trying to look after my mother in New Zealand, who's not well, and terminally not well, and she hasn't been for many years. The passing of my father, the impact it was having on my family and young child, and seeing all that. And so I was able to share that, which then I think also allowed maybe more people to then reach out directly. And we've heard some really cool stories now.
That'll happen.
Like I said to you before, I think we're up to about 65 calls now in the last 2 weeks or thereabouts, and it comes from a broad range of people from all around the world, from New Zealand to Australia, Singapore, UAE, UK, US, etc. All these people seem to have similar issues with their own mental health, or I don't say issues, but that it was impacting them, and and they found that golf was their outlet, and it could be a junior golfer that's under a lot of pressure trying to make it pro. But just doesn't have the right people around him, and I've observed that already. Someone that's on the circuit themselves, and they've experienced multiple suicides from the golfing circuit over the last 10-year period, right up to the higher aged group people, veterans, PTSD and anxiety and having panic attacks. So we've had a really broad group of people come across and share these experiences, which has been really humbling as well, because it does seem like people want to have an outlet to actually share what's going on in their lives, but they don't know how to go about it, or they don't know how to connect with.
Yes.
I'm sure you've got a couple of things to to share on that for your experience. So that's kind of how I guess solo is started, and now what's happening. And I think part of what you and I are doing now is more or less, you're not sharing what goes on the mental side. We're calling it beyond the game, and it comes down to what's going on in people's lives. In terms of, I guess, introing your experience as well. We've known each other for, how many years? Since 2014, 15?
Yeah. 10 years thereabouts. Yeah.
And your story in terms of what you've done is pretty awesome. I just absolutely love it as a starting point. Maybe you can go into a bit of detail about what you've actually done with, when we first met and you were setting up Beyond the Bears.
Yeah.
Hopefully we didn't steal your name there with Beyond the Bears game, but that was just that was a time.
I'm sure mine was inspired from something else anyway.
Well, it always derives from some kind of alcoholic beverage.
Exactly.
With men. Let's hear your story, man. I'm really keen to understand how you became the man coach.
Yeah, well, thank you, bro. And I suppose let's give a bit of context to that. What the fuck is that, right? Is maybe the more... Well, look, I was going to say the more common question, although, these days, man, we have a different world. Yes, I'm a men's coach, and so what the hell is that? Well, I'm already in the last, 5 hours, I have all these pieces of content coming at me and people talking to me about things like Louis Theroux's, for context, recent doco on Netflix about the manosphere. It's an interesting world now in working with men than it was, 10 years ago and more, I started this work really kind of back in 2012. So yeah, I'm a men's coach, and what the hell do I do? The simplest way to frame it is I help men, mostly nice guys, get the shit together and, become what I call unfuckwithable good men in life, love, and business. And so really what we're doing is we're just, if you think of like a jigsaw, this is a simple way I like to think of things. A lot of us are trying to build out a very complex picture, build a life. And what we see when we look at it is I'm not really clear on the picture that I'm building. Maybe I've inherited a lot of this picture, the ideas from my culture and community and family about what I should be building for a life, and I'm still, maybe now I've got responsibilities and I put my fucking head down, I've been working hard, and then I have a moment where I'm like, something's not quite connecting here. It might be a lot more significant than that, but there's a gap there somewhere, and then we're missing so many of the pieces. I'm haphazardly, I know what it looks like to build a good life, and this is a common experience I hear from a lot of guys, Tom, is life looks good on the outside, but on the inside it's a different fucking story, and you're hearing some of those stories, right? It's a complex jigsaw puzzle. We need a clear picture of what we're building, and we need all the pieces on the table. If we don't have all the pieces, it's just fucking hit and hope, and hope is a terrible strategy. So that's kind of where I come in, is to help me build a picture and get clear on themselves and what drives them and what they give a shit about and what matters to them and what determines their behaviours, their belief systems, how they show up in the world, why they react that way in their relationship, to sabotage finishing projects at work, to getting completely in their head about a putt, whatever it is, because that might happen for one guy but not the next guy. So it's really helping them kind of look within, manage their day-to-day shit, but also the shit that they're perhaps still carrying around from their past that feels heavy. It feels heavy, and sometimes extremely fucking heavy, too heavy for us. So I've been doing that work for a while, and around 2015, I suppose I've probably talked to you about this, but I think the original thing that led me to creating Beyond the Beers, which really was about as a marketing question, essentially, how do we get more men into exploring their own depths and going beyond the types of conversations that we just stick to on the surface, over a beer so easily. At that point, let's call it 2015, there was plenty of chat around men's mental health and so on, but you're kind of dealing with your Movembers, little things like that. And I'm not really here to talk about mental health. I'm working with men. Let's fucking do some stuff. But we need to start the conversation. So Beyond the Beers for me was, the idea at the very least was, how do we create an accessible first step to get men who are not in any way even exploring their own internal shit? Let's just start having those conversations. And something that you have essentially shared here with Solos, and we've talked about it before this moment, is you're providing permission, and that's what Beyond the Beers really was about for me. So it started with in-person events where we got men together, Beyond the Beers, conversations and cool shit, where we would, get brands in, we would talk about stuff and create environments where I would go first. Here's a bit of me, here's a bit of my story, here's a bit of my depth. Not just the surface stuff that can look shiny and cool, but actually the shit, because fundamentally we all have shit. And the shift that happened, and that I knew would happen, because I saw it in my work, with guys every day, was when we understand that, oh, I'm a human, we all have shit, no one is immune to it, it might look like it in this strange world that we have now, it becomes easier for someone to go, fuck, that's me too. I see a bit of me in you, and like, oh, you're doing that, I can do that too, because of course we can. Like, it's a conversation. And it's so much more than just having conversations, looking at the stuff that is challenging us. Like, what are the things we're actually going through? We talked off here about, what's happening with fuel and things that are happening in the world. And in your world, that's the challenge for a lot of men, is like, what are the things that are actually impacting you? But if we internalize all of that shit, it becomes this thing that will potentially combust in some way, internally or externally. Yeah. So for a lot of us, it does start with, if you're not dealing with all the shit that comes into your world, there are going to be consequences, mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, financially, all sorts. And so if you haven't got some avenue, let's create those.
I think like with solos, is you talk about permission. I think our aim is for you not to have a really subtle way of connecting with people that's not overpowering. So if you are on the golf course and you see someone wearing a Solos branded product, that essentially is a form of permission to go up to that person and just check in and go, hey, how you doing, man? The messaging behind what we're doing is clear in that, you know what, we want to raise awareness for mental health. If you are wearing one of our products, okay, well, there's a very strong belief that you are aware of the brand and the messaging in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So whether you're on the first hole or you're having a beer on the 19th in the clubhouse, if you see someone wearing Solo's brand, go and shout them a beer or a Pepsi or a Diet Coke, or have a quick chat with them.
It's an invitation to a different conversation that you might have, because there's a shared awareness of, oh, this brand doesn't just sell socks, they give a shit about something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think since we started the retail brand that we've even spoken about socks. If you look at the Solos Socks Instagram page, there's not a lot to do with socks on there. And that's powerful in itself, that we go like, the socks are there as a byproduct of what we're trying to achieve through building a community that people trust, and raising awareness and allowing people to talk and communicate with either myself directly through me sharing experiences with them, or just feel a safe place to go, hey, love what you guys are doing, here's something that's happened to me. Maybe that's an outlet for them to essentially not get a couple of things off their shoulders that they may have not been able to do. I had a good chat with a guy yesterday or the day before, and he mentioned about being unsure if he was a good enough father. And I was like, I mean, I'm no therapist, but man, what you're going through, 2 jobs, trying to play golf, 2 children, family, and still maintain, keeping up financially, that's a lot of scenarios and things to be loading up on yourself. And I think you have to take a step back and go, I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, and even asking the question tends to indicate that you're doing, you're caring about it, you're conscientious. Sure, there might be things that you can do and all that kind of stuff, but just having that type of orientation is hard to see, like step out from, but as a point of feedback to him and anyone else, it's usually a good indication that you care enough to be asking the question.
But anyway, I guess like in terms of moving forward and what we're looking to achieve, this is essentially the pilot for Solos Beyond the Game, collaboratively involving Mike Campbell. What are we looking to achieve, I guess, out of these episodes? We're going to jump on a call once a week, have a bit of a chat. What should we be looking to achieve? What can the audience be expecting? From your view, like I'd love to hear that, just you having so much experience in the space.
Yeah, I think, look, I suppose in some ways it's very, very open. Like it is one of the perhaps broader, more foundational pieces for me, in what I do. Like I kind of alluded to it earlier, and I've spoken to you about it, like I've never really been, or at least seen myself in the mental health space, let's call it. But of course everything is mental health, right? But really for me it's about helping raise the emotional literacy of men, Australia and New Zealand, and in that helping create the next kind of evolution of men and fathers, right? I'm a father, and that's a fairly obvious one, but it's also such a fucking important role that we have. And so it's kind of anything in that, but everything impacts our mental health. It's a funny one, right? Because I think we spoke about this as a term. What is that now? Mental health, right? It's kind of like companies that talk about culture. It's like, it's a cool thing to talk about, but do you even know what that is, right? And so I think, we have things that impact our mental and emotional well-being. We have things that impact our physical well-being, and beyond that, most of this for us is about talking about some things that might support people, opening conversations, but also engaging in them. Like if people want to hear us talk about, certain things, or like, I've got, as you've been sharing, I've got these particular situations. We can speak to those. I can be an agony uncle, let's call it, to some degree, and give some ideas and some feedback and support.
Yeah.
But more so, we want to create, as we said earlier, at the very least, permission for guys and anyone listening, of course, to take that next level. Like, okay, beyond the game, but obviously in the game is copious opportunities for real conversations. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, I've got 4 hours on the course, I need to sort my life out in this. But as you said, for some people, for many people, life is an outlet. Golf is an outlet. And for others, that outlet is also a wreck. There's a shit game and they're in their head the whole time and it was frustrating and it leads to more frustration. But either way, so much of our life can impact us. And I think the invitation for us is what's impacting us, how are we handling it, what tools do we have, and who's around us. Like the whole idea of solos, right? I love that. Whilst it was solo on the course, whatever it wasn't in the very fact that you're sharing it. And I think this is, in my work, one of the biggest pieces that I certainly come up against and work to I suppose deconstruct is, as men, we can very easily isolate ourselves, and we could still be around people, but we're in an isolated little bubble, right? You can be around people but alone, and we are not meant to go through our challenges alone, which is evidenced in the conversations that you've been having, right? Like, where and how do I talk about this stuff? There are avenues everywhere, but they are not for everyone, and so we at least want to provide another avenue for people to listen, to perhaps feel heard, or like, shit, that's like me too. I work with men, but I still have my own challenges. Of course I do, right? Probably have a tough conversation with my wife tonight when she gets home. Like that, we all have our challenges. I'm sure my 5.5-year-old will also make me feel very challenged between now and going to school tomorrow morning, and whatever else it might be. I have a business. All those things they challenge us, and so if we can't navigate them, or we try and navigate them all alone, you might have broad shoulders, but you don't need to carry it all, right? Like, so yeah. We want to provide, at the very least, an avenue, insights, permission for people to explore some shit that might exist beyond the game, but of course might also exist inside the game, because of course we will tend to take our approaches to life to other things, right? If you're anxious and in your head with conversations at work or with your partner, you're probably going to be in your head, when you're on the course, and that is not necessarily something that needs fixed, but it can be a nice little indicator, like, oh yeah, should I do that too? Like, okay, so maybe exploring this here might help it over here,
I think that's probably a good way to finish up on this first pilot episode. Is more or less like we're opening it up to everyone to come at us, to bring us, share stories. We're inviting you to share a topic that you would like us to actually talk about and explore further. And that's what excites me most. I mean, I guess I'm sharing my own vulnerabilities and experiences and opening up, and that's a form of, I guess, relief for me as well. But we'd love to hear from everyone that is getting around solos and trying to figure out how we can be that extra arm on their shoulder to carry them through that next couple of steps. So we'll be online once a week, every Sunday. We're going to do an episode, and we're just going to run through what we think men would like to hear and go from there.
Yeah, I can't help you with your game on the course, but perhaps this just sounds this coming to my head now, but it sounds cheesy. We have to say it, but perhaps more with the game of life. No, but we can explore the stuff that's there, and like I said before, we're not supposed to go through life solo. Like, we're humans. We are relational creatures, and for some people that's like a nice idea, but it's really confronting and hard in your life. Well, okay, here's one avenue that you can explore, and we can explore some things if you want to throw them down to us, or otherwise we'll come up with some things that we think might land. I've
got enough on my shoulders, mate. I can throw about 12 episodes at you straight away, so we're good.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's it, right? Like, and we talked about this, and for everyone listening, because here's a question. I don't want to go on too much longer, but here's a question that I've kind of heard from a lot of guys in a form of like, why even bother? Like, why bother having that conversation with my missus, or like, getting on the front foot and talking to that client, or talking about the shit that weighs me down. Like, I just got to fucking deal with it. I got to push on through. It's like sometimes we do need that, but that alone isn't resilience, because if exploring something was going to lead to you breaking, that's brittle, not resilience. Yeah. And one of the ways in which we deal with shit is knowing how to put it down, but also having it witnessed, because it helps us process shit that we're going through. That's a very human piece. And so, yeah, if you don't have those people, find them, but also we'll do our best to provide a little bit of that for now.